I'm making an executive decision.
Uh-oh.
We're moving into the summer now. I think this summer we're going to cover just
Summer movies?
summer movies / kids in danger.
Sweep the leg. You have a problem with that?
Welcome to the Project Gen X Retro Summer Series 2022.
Sarah, beware. I have been generous up until now, but I can be cruel.
Starting in May and ending in August, we will review the summer movies from our youth that include Tron,
Still don't understand why you want to break into the system.
Because, man, somewhere in one of these memories is the evidence. If I got in far enough, I could reconstruct it.
Adventures in Babysitting,
Don't fuck with the babysitter.
The Goonies,
Don't say that! Never say that! Goonies never say die!
Back to the Future,
Whoa, this is heavy. There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull? What?
and so much more.
We talked into the night. The kind of talk that seemed important until you discover girls.
If I can only have one food for the rest of my life, that's easy. Pez. Cherry flavored Pez.
Along the way, we will also sprinkle in some non-movie goodness that will remind us what it was like to be a kid when the socks were high, the shorts were extra short, and there wasn't a cell phone to be seen.
E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. Wants to call somebody.
So sit back and join Big Dave, Barry, and myself, Alan Smith, to relive the magic of the 80s and the retro summer. Well, we're recording now. So if you're not ready, you are now. Welcome back to the Project Gen X podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alan Smith, along with...
I'm the other guy, and I'm not ready. I'm Big Dave.
and we're also joined by...
I'm kind of ready. I'm Barry! Barry!
And Barry's taking point on this one because that's what Barry does. Whenever we have a lot of research, he's like, I'll go do it. And I'm like, you go right ahead, my friend.
Hey, you go with your strengths, right?
All right. This one is a part of our Retro Summer 2022. When we started putting this together, of course, we had a list of movies that we were going to do, but we also said, hey, let's do
summer.
Let's do a couple of episodes. We're trying to do an episode per month that we're doing this. It's probably not going to happen. That's kind of outside of the. It's not just
the movies.
The movies,
yeah.
Because we are doing so many movies, and we've done stuff before about like summertime and cruising,
which you were not into, but I enjoyed.
No, but you know what? I was fine. That was kind of one of the first times that Dave was like, "Hey, I got an idea," and then we turned the mic on, and I wasn't doing anything. It was just like Dave talked about it, and I was like, "Yeah, no," and we had stories. I mean, we both had stories about that kind of stuff. But this is we're going to talk about amusement parks.
Yes, and not just amusement. And before we get started, let me just say this is a non-Disney episode.
Yes,
there's no single mouse in this anywhere.
Have you been to any of the Disney parks?
I have been to Disney World.
Okay, I have been to Disney World once.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was in the marching band in high school, and we actually went down and was in one of the parades.
Nerd.
I went to Kings Island. Shut up.
We had to get ready in the backstage area, and there's nothing more traumatizing than seeing all the Disney characters with their heads off and the people inside chain smoking and talking bad about the people in the park.
Well, there you go.
It's basically IT.
I would love to see that documentary.
Actually, it was very interesting. Speaking of documentaries, that was kind of the inspiration for this. For those of you that are unaware of it, there is a great documentary out. I believe it's on HBO Max now. It's called Class Action Park.
And it's about Action Park.
It's about Action Park in
it's in New Jersey.
What was it?
That's all you have to say. Is
Vernon Township, New Jersey.
Yeah.
In New Jersey.
Very loosely, there was a movie that came out a few years ago. It's called Action Point, which is Johnny Knoxville, and it's actually a really good movie. I was surprised at how good it was.
I haven't seen it yet, but I was reading up about it.
It really is good. And then I don't even remember what I was going to say. There was something else that I had to go.
Well,
with.
there's
I can't remember what it was now.
There's countless movies that are like this, like Adventureland was one.
Oh, I love Adventureland.
Yeah.
I love Adventureland.
It's a great movie.
That reminded me so much of Opryland, which is something we're going to talk about. Something else I want to say before we get into this, and I will put links to this,
please,
in There are a couple of my voice. I'm going through puberty again. There are a couple of YouTube channels that I highly recommend you go into, and one of them is called Defunctland.
Yes.
That is an amazing, because they talk about all these different parks that no longer exist. And there's another one that I follow. Hold on, let me find it here. Here it is. Yeah. It's Expedition Theme Park.
Yes.
Which is the same, they cover all kinds, like even some of them that are still operating. Both of them are great.
Yeah.
They do deep dive, and they have all kinds of archival footage, as well as, they're so... It hits you right in the nostalgia.
Yes,
yes,
absolutely. And just to be clear, some of the parks that we're going to talk about today are still in existence and are still functioning. Yes. There are quite a few of them, though, that do not exist anymore.
Oh, and also, let's be clear, these are also regional to us.
Yes,
for the most part, because we're if you've listened long, you know that we're here in Middle Tennessee, outside of Nashville, and surprisingly, we had a lot of theme parks within
come and gone,
but that have been within a driving radius,
right? 2.5 hour,
day trip.
We'll say 4. We'll say 4.
Because when we get into Six Flags of Atlanta, that's a 4-hour drive.
Yeah, that's true. But Kings Island's kind of
Kings Island's about 4 hours. Yeah. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
Barry.
but so again, this kind of got inspired by watching Class Action Park, and it got me thinking about all of these. I love abandoned amusement parks, the videos of them, the pictures of them. I've seen stuff from, countless different ones that don't exist anymore. Right. And hearing the stories about, okay, well, this was a great idea at the time, and it just kind of, completely fell apart. I give you Heritage USA. But
oh wow,
yeah, that was if you don't know what that is, kids, look that one up. You can thank me later.
Yeah, look that one up.
I even found out that there was one park that I was just chomping at the bit to go to, and it lasted for like 6 months and then died, and that was the one that was done by the Hard Rock Cafe.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
They had one. I want to say it was in South Carolina. It was in North Carolina, South Carolina. It was right there on the coast. But they opened it up. It had this great concepts for different rides and different things like that. Like they had a roller coaster ride that was based off of Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll.
Nice.
And they would play the music through the speakers on behind your head, and it was kind of in tune with what you were doing in the coaster.
Nice.
Yeah, it didn't last long. They didn't have the funding for it. It just fell apart. It just bad idea. A great idea, just not funded on it. So
bad idea, good idea executed poorly.
Right. So I went through and started developing a bit of a list of just some of the ones that, I've gone to, or one of the other fellows here have gone to, that have some special memories on it. And really, if they're still in existence, I can't recommend them enough to go check them out. They're definitely, worth a visit. They're a good family place, but also just as individuals, so much fun to go and check out. And these are the ones that you could just run rampant in for so long.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll go ahead and start off with the one that's kind of near and dear to at least Alan and mine's heart, and I'm pretty sure Dave too. The defunct, unfortunately.
Damn you, Gaylord.
In Nashville, Tennessee, Opryland, USA.
All right,
and I've got a little specs on each one.
Go right ahead, because we're I want to apologize up front for anyone who's listening to this, because you're going to hear grown men weep.
Yes,
and be angry,
because this is a lot of our childhood. Even though I lived in other states, we would always come home to Kentucky every summer, and part of that vacation was to come down to Nashville one day out of the vacation and go to Opryland for a full day.
And as men,
that was every year.
As men, we have a tendency to process our emotions differently than women and that kind of stuff. And when it comes to this one, I will full on say that when it comes to the emotions that I feel about Opryland closing, I choose violence.
Oh yeah,
I mean this is
still anger.
I choose violence.
20 this year at the end of 2022, it will be 25 years since they closed Opryland.
December 31st, 1997.
That's bullshit. That is why, because we got a fucking mall. That's why. Okay, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay,
at this
I'm
point.
still craving.
Go ahead. Let's talk about the good times.
Yeah.
I'm still craving my my drinks out of the actual fruit shake
fruit. Yes, that was awesome.
The grape
those were the
Lay's.
Those were the best tasting drinks.
I'm telling you, man.
My parents would only let us get them as we were leaving the park.
Yeah.
So we'd be staring at them all day.
So for those of you that have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, Opryland USA was a theme park that was based in Nashville in conjunction with the Grand Ole Opry.
Yes.
And the idea for
and
it,
General Mills.
And well, no, that came in later. That was
I
the
know.
original.
And the Opryland Hotel.
Well, that came later
also,
too. Yeah.
But the idea was that they wanted to give people a location to do stuff. So what they wanted to do was tie in a visit to the Grand Ole Opry, have something for the kids to do, then stay at the Opryland Hotel. So you basically didn't have to go anywhere.
It was kind of like a resort. In some
Yeah,
ways.
very much so.
Yeah.
It was initially patterned for a resort, and initially I don't recall who owned it from the get-go.
It wasn't Gaylord initially.
It wasn't Gaylord. Someone else owned it, and then back in the early '80s, it was purchased. It was originally built in 1972.
Right,
and
before any of us were here.
Yeah, exactly.
A year before I was here.
Right. And as it went through, it was at one point owned by the Mills Corporation, as in General Mills, as in cereal. And they had so much sponsorship in there to the point where they had the characters from the cereal boxes that were there.
No joke. There were like those stand-ups where you go and put your head through and get your picture taken of
Count Chocula,
Boo
Berry, and Frankenberry.
Well, they also had the one that everybody forgets about. I can't remember.
Fruit or the Yummy Mummy.
Yummy Mummy.
And Fruit Brute. They also, but you had the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee,
Trix Rabbit.
It was all of those General Mills cereals. They had
Lucky from Lucky
Charms.
The only time Mom would let us eat sugar cereals was right before we get ready to come back to Kentucky, because you could collect the box tops.
Yes.
Get discount.
Yes, and you could get discount. You could.
So that was the only time we ever got like Fruity Pebbles.
Right.
And no, that was post.
No, that was post.
Yeah,
but
like
all
Count
that
Chocula.
stuff. Yeah, I understand.
We only got sugar cereals in the summer for the box tops.
And the other thing, as a kid, it wasn't all that important to us, but our parents and our grandparents were really tied to WSM.
Yes.
Had their stations based in Opryland, so you could go and watch shows that were recorded, both radio shows as well as television shows.
You could literally go and listen to Keith Bilbrey, watch him live or
watch
air,
or watch an episode of Hee Haw.
Yes,
that was recorded in Opryland Studios.
Yes,
and the biggest thing that came out of that for the longest time, and I'm sure you boys will both remember the name of it when I say I Hear America Singing.
Yes. Yep.
That was one of their big shows that they had going.
Not
for
only that,
years.
but you also have to remember that when the Nashville Network came into being, their studios was there.
Yep.
I went to Music City Tonight a couple of times.
Yep.
Got ticket. You could get tickets for nothing, for
Shotgun
free.
Red and
all that stuff was there. And it's kind of, again, we're kind of getting into a lot of
Roy
Nashville.
Acuff himself would just walk around the park.
Well, he owned the property.
Yeah.
He owned the property.
Roy Acuff used to live like right down the street.
He used to sit at the top of a ride called the Grizzly River Rampage and watch people go by and wave at him.
Right.
Yep. That's what he did. I mean, welcome to Nashville. You don't get more Nashville than looking up while you're getting soaked on a water ride and seeing an Opry member waving at you.
I know.
That's just perfect.
And of course, they always, with the whole I Hear America Singing, and they had like they used to have. Okay, for those of you who are not from Nashville, if you ever have if you think that you are a good singer/musician, come and hang out in Nashville for like, I don't know, 6 hours, and then go home with your tail between your legs.
It's often been said the worst house musician in Nashville is better than the best house musician in pretty much anywhere else.
Pretty much. And I'm not saying that's a brag. Arrogant. No, it's just that's because people come here, like the best of the best come here.
Well,
so you would have like these I Hear America Singing.
Mm-hmm.
There were these.
There were multiple shows at multiple theaters.
Theater by the Lake was the big one.
Yeah.
And they would always do they did all the Opry songs. They would do Roy Acuff, they would do Wabash Cannonball or Ride the Train or any number of these old country songs.
The Bluegrass Shed over by Flume Zone.
Yes.
So and let's get into the actual layout of the park here really quick. So the initial layout of this park was it was out into sections, and each one of the sections was catered towards a specific style of music. So you had more traditional, like Main Street USA kind of bandstand type stuff. You had,
and they had like a 1950s,
very
early, that type
almost
of
like barbershop quartet kind of sound.
They did have some of that stuff as well.
They had the rock and roll era of it. They called it the Doo-Wah Diddy City.
Yes, Doo-Wah Diddy City.
They had a section that was more on the country side of it, where you had your rides like the Flume Zoom,
right?
Or excuse me, the Dulcimer Splash.
That's what it started out at.
Yeah, and they renamed
they got
it
the
back
Old
to
Bill
it.
Scream, and they had the Barnstormers. transformers,
and they had a ton of different rides.
Well,
on it.
don't forget the New Orleans area.
Yes,
That's
the
a
New Orleans
huge
area.
carousel.
Yes. Oh, dude, that carousel
Was amazing.
Yeah.
It's still here in Nashville. They have it. It's been in storage ever since. Okay, this thing was built in the 1930s.
Yes.
or something
In
like
Germany.
that. Yeah,
Germans.
And when the shop when Opryland closed, they put it in storage, and they brought it back out at one point, and it was down at Riverfront Park for a while.
Really?
Yeah, for a couple.
I remember that.
And then they put it back in storage
Because it was getting damaged.
It's still sitting there, unfortunately.
But there, and again, each one of these were laid out in different areas. Now there were certain rides that are of note, and obviously we have such a passion for this. We could gush on every single ride that was there.
Wabash Cannonball.
The Wabash Cannonball was.
This could be a complete episode.
Yeah.
It really
by
could.
itself.
It really
Yeah,
could.
absolutely. But the Wabash Cannonball was definitely one of the first ones. This was a roller coaster. It was a single loop coaster, but
It was a double loop.
or it was a helix. It wasn't a loop.
Yeah.
It was a helix.
Yeah, it did.
But it was one of the first coasters in the area on this. I've actually got some notes on these. Let's not forget about the Grizzly River Rampage,
Yes.
which was a raft ride
Yes.
that took you through into a cave where you saw a giant grizzly bear.
Animatronic bear.
Yeah, exactly.
That stopped working after about the second season.
Yeah,
That
And it just
Opryland
never
had a
moved.
bad habit of having really nice features
that did not last.
that would last 2
Chaos.
years. Chaos.
Chaos is
Chaos.
one of the.
So Chaos, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, this was one of our first indoor coasters. It was supposed to be kind of designed like Space Mountain.
Kind of.
But it was supposed to be you wore 3D glasses.
You wore 3D glasses
Because
They
there was
tried-
a
It was this whole sensory overload
a
type
screen
thing.
at
And
the
top,
top,
very
and
top,
the bottom,
and
at
they
the
never
bottom.
worked.
Right.
They never worked.
And so the inside circle would go up slowly.
Yes.
And you're supposed to be watching this show between the two screens on the top
with
and
like
on the bottom.
clocks
Right,
bursting,
yeah.
and all
And
this
then
kind of
when you
weird
got
stuff.
to the top, this thing would swing out to the outside, and you would go back down outside the
In
initial
blackout.
and you were gaining
in blackout, and
it's
the-
fast.
the cars would actually go through projector screens.
Yeah.
With different visuals on them, and that's
some
what
of
the
them
whole
were creepy.
Yes.
Some of them were just
Oh,
plain creepy.
Yep.
But it only lasted for 2 years, and then it was just an indoor ride in the dark where it was air conditioned, and
Yes.
that's where you would go to cool off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's one other ride that I did want to mention, the Screaming Delta Demon.
Yes.
For a couple of reasons. This was it was a sled ride.
Yes.
It was a sled coaster, which was kind of a rare thing. You didn't see that too often.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, basically it is kind of
Bobsled.
It's a bobsled
On wheels.
Yeah.
that you're riding down. Now, the cool thing is this one actually, the entire area around it was made up to look like a swamp.
Yes.
And they at one time had live caimans in that swamp.
Yeah.
They didn't last very long because
Somebody lost pets.
People freaked
Right,
out.
right.
But once they pulled those out, but that ride was there for years up until the parks closed. And
Actually, the structure was there for a long time after the park
Yes.
closed. Like there was before, without getting into a whole lot of into the details here.
Right.
Before, or after Opry Mills was built, and then before the Opryland Hotel expanded again.
yeah.
Basically the Screaming Delta Demon was there for a good 2 years. Like you could still see, like it wasn't complete, but you could still see some
Pieces of the track and stuff.
But all of the outside of it that was supposed to look like hills or whatever it was.
Right.
All that
The
was
rock
there for
formation.
all of that was there for years, and then they finally tore it down.
You're also forgetting about the rock and roller coaster.
Well,
Rock and
again,
roller
we
coasters.
could spend hours just going on the different rides.
Old Mill Scream.
These are some of the highlights on those specific ones,
Yeah,
and we may end
I
up
know.
doing an entire episode on
Hangman.
Opry
Don't
Mills
forget
at
the
some
Hangman.
point.
That came in at the very end.
was the very
That
last
was
ride,
very end
and it
of it.
always
You call-
sucked. It
you call
never
it the
worked.
Hangman. I call it the death knell.
Yeah,
you know,
I've ridden it.
People
It's a lot
would
of fun.
constantly get stuck on that thing, and they'd have to get cranes in there to get them off the ride.
it's not fun.
It was a piece
right.
of junk ride.
So the next one that I've got on my list, and again, this is another park that unfortunately doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
It's very special to me because it was literally right.
hold on.
Yes.
One thing I do want to say about Opryland before we
Please.
get out of here, and you probably experienced the same thing.
What's that?
That I did. My family would buy season
The
passes.
season pass, the babysitter for the summer.
once we moved in, we did too.
That was one of the greatest things because in a very different world,
They
from
would
where we
drop
live
you
in
off
now,
at 9 a.m.
At 9 a.m. and say, "Be back here at 5."
Yep.
And basically, a bunch of kids.
Running.
Literally, it would be like a couple of my friends, whoever's mom was. It was like, hey, you want to go to Opryland? Would pick up everybody and go and drop them off, and then whoever else's mom would come and pick everybody up in the afternoon. And literally, we were dropped off at 9:00 at the age of 10 or 11 years old,
and left to run roughshod in that park.
And you just went. Yep. That was it. And.
I also want to
I miss those days.
That I was in the park.
I would never do that with my kid.
No.
I was
pre-cell phone days,
and I was in the park for the Halloween fire.
I
was actually
Halloween was so much fun.
I was actually on the rock and roller coaster when the fire was happening, which means the fire, we were right over the top of the fire, like you could feel the heat.
Oh, jeez.
Nice. Yeah, they couldn't get the
completely different time.
Oh yeah. All right.
Okay, go ahead. What we got next?
Again, the next one, I'm not sure if you guys have had any experience with it, but like I said, this one's a special place in my heart because it was literally right across the street from where I went to college. This was in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And it was called Libertyland.
Nope, I've never been there.
Libertyland, it opened in
never heard of it.
October of 76, and it closed in October of 2005.
It lasted a long time.
Well, here's the interesting thing. This was actually owned by the city of Memphis. It's the first time I've ever heard of an amusement park that was owned by the city.
Near the zoo?
It close.
Close. Okay.
Yeah, it was over beside the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah.
And Mid-South Coliseum. So,
which means it's not a very good part.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, that's one of the better parts of town, believe it or not.
Now, maybe.
Well, no, that's because I went to Christian Brothers and it was literally right over the street. But the biggest notable thing about this is that it had Elvis Presley's favorite roller coaster.
Okay.
And actually one of the oldest existing wooden roller coasters in the United States.
Was it named Priscilla?
It was called the Zippin' Pippin. There's still some debate on when this was built. If it was built in, I'm just ignoring you. If it was built in 1912 or 1917, there's still some debate on it. The whole damn thing was made of pine.
Wow.
Everything
it's kind of
was
like
made
the
of pine.
Beast.
Yeah, very
bit.
Similar to it. The construction was considered one of the most historic constructions ever because it's one of the few that was put in at the beginning of the park and stayed the entire length of the park.
Well, that's
never
cool.
changed it.
That's cool.
It's believed that Elvis on, what was the date? August 8th, 1977.
Yep. When he died.
No, he died on August 16th.
Oh, okay. So
But
he went
August
there before.
8 days before he died.
Okay.
He basically went there and from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. ran the park roughshod and just continued to run that roller coaster over and over and over again.
Hey, when you're the king, you can do that kind of stuff.
So it doesn't always necessarily end with a bad note, though. The Zippin' Pippin does still exist. Okay. It is in Bay Beach Amusement Park in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And when I read this, I thought this was very, very cool. Not a lot of things that I've read in certain parks are the nicest things in the world, but props to my people in Wisconsin for this. If you go to Bay Beach Amusement Park in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and show them a Tennessee State ID, you get to ride the Pippin for free.
Nice.
I thought that was cool.
That is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know several of the rides from Opryland wound up at other amusement parks.
Yes.
Kentucky Kingdom, most notably. But I will link. Defunctland has done some great stuff about this, about where rides wound up and everything.
There's also a great website called the RCDB. It's the Roller Coaster Database.
Oh, okay.
And that you can search by park, you can search by name of coaster, you can search by all these kinds of things. And it not only shows you where it was in one park, but if it got moved or anything like that, where it ended up.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
A great resource. Next one. In Austell, Georgia. Okay. Yes, that's a real town.
Austell.
Just outside of Atlanta.
Yes.
Six Flags over Georgia.
Yep.
Been here once.
I've been there a few times.
Oh, many times. Called the thrill capital of the South.
Yeah, okay.
I can't.
How many?
Sure.
How many Six Flags? There was one in Texas.
There was at one
St.
point in time, there were several. They started off with just 6,
right?
Because that was the whole point. Is that Six Flags, 6 different locations. But they've had Great Americas in Chicago.
Yeah.
They have Six Flags St. Louis. They have they had New Orleans.
Yes, they did.
Which is now a swamp.
Yes.
Six Flags over Georgia. There was actually a couple in Ohio. There was I can't remember, it was Six Flags something or another that was Geauga Lake. Yeah. But that's folded many times over. But they've had several. I think even Magic Mountain out in California.
I think it was at one
time.
point.
I don't know if it still is or not.
Well, the other thing about Six Flags, I don't know if you got this in there, is like they were bought out so many times.
They weren't bought out. They were partnered with.
Okay, then that's what it is.
Yeah,
I know they were with Paramount at one point. They were with Universal at one point.
They had sponsorships with them, but they were not committed to a lot of those. And mainly, the biggest one that they had was DC Comics. That was their big one.
They had one with Marvel at one point too.
They didn't really. I don't think
because they had an X-Men show. Because I remember seeing it.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look, but all mine said DC just because
I know because they had the Superman ride,
Superman,
and
the Batman.
I rode the Batman.
I did.
That was in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. So they did do a lot with DC, and a lot of those are still there. They've had other partnerships with different companies, but specifically the one in Georgia. The cool thing about that is they had such established rides outside of that sponsorship. Some of them are still there that are just amazingly good. If you're a coaster fan and you've never heard of the Georgia Cyclone or the Great American Scream Machine,
Great American Scream Machine,
I've ridden both of them,
or Goliath.
Yep,
the Great American Scream Machine almost killed me and the person I was riding with.
I've ridden
because
all
we
of
got
them.
in the car and we lowered the bar.
Yep,
and they came by and checked the bar, and it kind of rattled funny when he checked it. And then as we were pulling out of the station, I was able to raise it completely back up.
Yep. That's never a good thing.
And the girl that was riding with me was way smaller than me. So the only way I could keep us both in the car is I pulled the bar down.
And held it in place.
Put my arm around her and then wrapped my arms through the bars and held onto the front of the car.
You got her phone number too, didn't you?
No, we never ended up no.
Well.
I saved her life and she totally blew me off.
So you gave her your heart, she gave you a pen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
And actually, you mentioned Batman. Batman the Ride was one of the first suspended coasters that was down there as well. And a lot of these are still there. There was one that I loved that's been rebranded, and I can't remember what's been rebranded to. It's called the Ninja.
Yes.
And the Mindbender.
The Ninja was rebranded several times.
Yes.
They were in the process of rebranding it when I was down.
Yeah,
they
and
repainted it and rebranded it.
They also did the same thing. Remember they had, what was it, the drop, whatever it was, they would take you up like so many stories, and then they would drop you, They had a couple of different brandings.
What was
on
the
that
racing
as well.
coaster where they'd like
Red and Blue Racers?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a very specific story about Six Flags over Atlanta.
Okay.
Here we go.
That you will, and Dave actually will remember something that had to do with this. So every summer, I don't know when it started, but I know through the 90s, they would have a thing for like, I don't know if it was a week or a weekend. I think it was a weekend. One of the things called Atlanta Fest.
The Christian music. I went twice.
I did too. 94. When did you go?
Would have been. It may have been actually 94.
That's where that's where I discovered Dakota Motor Company.
Yes,
that was the year that when right before Welcome Race Fans,
and it was in that little bitty theater that was tucked in the middle of nowhere.
They did it that night. Then they played on the main stage the next day.
Yep.
Okay, so they would have where you would go. No, here's the thing. For this, they were like, "Hey, you can come down here and camp."
Yep.
Okay, so basically they put you on the outside of the park, back behind the staging areas for everything. Okay, so you have thousands of teenagers
just hanging out
with nothing to do.
Yeah,
see where this is going.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Do you remember Fred?
Fred,
my prosthetic burnt skeleton.
Yes, I do.
That's where I got Fred.
I think I may have Fred's head.
I think you do. I remember throwing Fred away because he was worse for wear. Basically, what it was, all of the stuff that they had for Halloween, they had like the props and everything was back on the other side of a fence.
Yeah,
right next to our campsite,
and just so happened to end up in the backseat of your car.
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
So I wound up with Fred that way. That was a lot of fun. That was also the summer. I remember calling back home, and my dad telling me that O.J. Simpson's wife had been murdered.
Yes.
And
here we go.
I remember this.
I have those two very vivid memories of being in Atlanta in 1994.
I wonder if I can find a white Bronco. I need a car right now.
Well, they did bring Broncos back.
They did.
I don't want one of the new ones. I can't afford one of the new ones.
But that was fun though.
Yeah.
The camping and the experience, and they had they would have concerts well into the night. And
and you were just exhausted by the time
Oh
it was
man,
done.
I slept so much when I got back home. So anyway,
the next one, going back to Tennessee, boys. up in Pigeon Forge. This one went through several names. Initially, it was called the Rebel Railroad. Back in 61 is when it was created. It was rebranded when it was purchased by, of all people, Art Modell. As in former owner of the Cleveland Browns, Art Modell.
Wow.
Yeah. Got it and rebranded it the Gold Rush Junction.
I think I remember that.
No, then it became...
In 76, it became Silver Dollar City.
That's the one you probably remember.
That's the one I remember.
And in 86, it became...
Dollywood. Yes.
I have only been to Dollywood once. It was after the park was closed. We were there to see Bill Cosby live.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
Wow, that didn't age well. I have never been to Dollywood.
Neither have I.
I have been to Silver Dollar City, though.
Okay.
Again, another church thing.
Yeah.
Royal Rangers, which was basically the Assemblies of God's version of
Boy
Scouts, would have their what do they call it? Camperama up there every year. And people would come from all over the country to it. And so I spent a couple of weekends up there over the course of, several years. So much fun.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so much
fun.
fun.
So for those of you that aren't familiar with Dollywood, and I don't know what rock you're living under not to know about this one, but Dolly Parton purchased this because she wanted to give back to the community of Pigeon Forge. One of the at the time,
she's from Sevier County.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
one of the poorest counties in the state of Tennessee at the time.
At the time.
She had, by her purchase on this, has added approximately 4,000 people on the payroll just to run Dollywood.
Yep.
And that is the single largest employer in the county of Sevier County.
By the way, through Dollywood,
yes,
she has almost single-handedly brought back the American bald eagle through her bald eagle sanctuary in the park.
So,
and it's nothing unusual
to see her there.
At all.
Just walking around.
Yeah, it's checking on stuff. So, real quick on the park design, there's actually
not quite like Twitty City though.
No. See, I almost put that on here, but that's not an amusement park. But so it had 11 different areas, or it has, that talk about the historical eras and culture of East Tennessee, as well as a big part of Dolly Parton's life.
Yes,
and also her imagination and what the kind of stuff that she generates. It is known for hosting several of the largest festivals in the South.
Yep.
Not in Tennessee, in the entire southern nation. Go to Dollywood. As far as the rides go, you were talking...
You want to walk back that southern nation.
Okay, yeah, never mind. Let me rephrase that one. Thank you.
Bad idea. Poorly executed.
Oops. In the nation.
I was just going to sit here and see how long it took somebody to figure it out.
Oh my God! How am I the one that put my foot
I know. How would you of all of it?
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that your job?
I was going to say you're the most liberal of all of us here. How did you go to Southern Nation?
Oops. Anyway, the rides on this. So let's talk about the rides for a second. You have the Dollywood Express, which sounds like a great name for a porn, but.
Do you remember the...
Why?
It does.
Why?
Do you remember...
After the first one, you had to come back with that one?
Do you remember the live episode of the Drew Carey Show where they went to Nashville?
Yes.
And Oswald and...
Oswald Harvey.
Well, Oswald and what was Ryan Stiles and they were going to go to Dollywood. That was their whole thing, and they were making all kinds of like horrible jokes. As I guess, So anyway,
yes. Real quick, one of the ones that we talked about on this, as far as we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it. So as far as the Dollywood, the rides that are in Dollywood that just still some of them are mind blowing. We talked about the Dollywood Express, which is a full size steam locomotive.
Yes,
one of the few that's still in operation and used daily. The Thunderbird, which is a wooden coaster.
Yes.
The Blazing Fury, which is an indoor roller coaster.
Is it Chaos?
It's like a dark ride too.
Okay.
So, but the one that's the most notable that I think is kind of cool is the Wild Eagle.
Okay.
Now the Wild Eagle is America's first winged coaster. And I had to look up what that was. Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure. Basically, the carts themselves are eagles that have wings out on the span, and you ride on the span of the eagle wing.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
I know that
on top or strapped underneath.
Underneath it.
I know that a couple of Opryland attractions wound up in Dollywood.
Yes.
It's I think the Rock and Roller Coaster might have been one of them.
And now you remind me what I was going to say as far as Opryland. If you're looking for a good reference on Opryland, and I've got a couple of others as we go through some of these, several TV shows, movies, things like that have settings that are taking place in some of these parks.
Yes.
There is a movie. Robert Altman had a movie called Nashville, and there is a big sequence in there that takes place in Opryland, and it was actually filmed in the park.
You know, you were talking about the steam engine in Dollywood.
Yes.
And we didn't even talk about the 3 locomotives that
yeah,
went through the park of
Opryland.
Opryland.
Yeah.
We
That's how you get around the parks. You
that was
jump on
that
the train
and the Sky Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also did not talk about the 10 Lizzies.
Again, we could spend forever talking about this.
Let me say this because I meant to say it. And guys, you talk about Altman and all that kind of stuff. I can do you one better.
Okay.
I have the Viewmaster pack.
Oh, nice.
Matter of fact, when this is done, I will go and pull it out of the box.
Nice.
It's in there. But yeah, that's how big Opryland was.
Yes.
Is that Viewmaster actually had reels that
and they would take the picture and sell you the little point of view thing.
And there was I was just like,
I love that.
Anyway, so
all right. So we're going to move a little further north on this one.
Okay, Kings Island.
No. We're saving the big one for last.
Cedar Point.
Holiday World and Splashin' Safari.
I have
Santa
never been
Claus,
here. Okay?
Indiana.
I've never been there.
I have.
But being from Kentucky and having moved to Michigan.
Yes.
And we would have to drive that drive, and I remember seeing the billboards.
Mm-hmm. Well, originally it was called Santa Claus Land.
Yes.
And this was
Santa
Claus
Claus, Indiana.
One of the older parks, actually. This was back in 46 is when it was first created.
Wow, I didn't realize they were that old.
Yeah.
Okay.
The park is, it changed over in 84 to be called Holiday World because they wanted to expand outside of just Christmas.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And the name of the town that it's in is Santa Claus, Indiana.
Right.
So,
right.
But go ahead.
I remember seeing the billboards.
Oh, yeah.
Driving back and forth between Michigan and coming back to Kentucky to go to Opryland and seeing this, Santa Claus.
Well, and now
wanted to go,
and if you live in Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Arkansas,
Missouri,
anywhere in that area, you see these commercials for Holiday World and Splashin' Safari all the time.
Well, and that's one of the
you
things,
always know when it's about to begin summer when all of a sudden the Holiday World billboards start popping up around the area.
I had never heard of Holiday World
until
probably the late 90s, early 2000s, somewhere in there. And all of a sudden they started a media blitz. Like you wouldn't believe.
It was crazy.
Now I think a lot had to do with the fact that Opryland wasn't around any longer, so they could be the biggest thing in the area. So
and in defense, they are about equidistant drive from Nashville to Santa Claus, Indiana, that it is from Nashville to Pigeon Forge. So
3 hours.
Yeah, give or take.
Yeah.
So it's
their big gimmick is all the drinks in the park are free.
Free drinks, free
and
sunscreen.
no child is allowed to leave crying.
Yes.
Yep.
That's like one of their big things. If the kid's crying, like on the way out, they will the park employees will come around and do everything to get the kid laughing before they're gone.
So let's talk about the park design for a second. It's actually in 4 different themes throughout the park. They have one section that's for Christmas, one for Halloween, one for 4th of July, and one for Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving is kind of an odd one, but I'll say this much:
is that where all the restaurants?
I was about to say the food over there has got to be amazing. And then
I like any theme park that will let me go and eat turkey. And
I'm down, baby,
and dressing.
I am
any
there.
time of the year.
I'm spending all day in the Halloween section.
Bring me the pumpkin pie. Anyway, and then they had a few years back they added a section, a water park on it called Splashin' Safari, which is kind of the entrance to it. Oddly enough, is in the middle of the park. It's not like a separate entrance. You go into Holiday World to get to Splashin' Safari. You can go through Halloween or Thanksgiving to get into it, and it's more of a I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's a safari theme. It has a lot of that, kind of jungle-esque kind of look to it. Some of the notable rides on it, we'll start with Splashin' Safari because it does have some water coasters on it. It has something called Mammoth and Wildebeest. These are pro-slide hydromagnetic mammoth water coasters. They also have something called the Otorongo, which is actually 3 separate tubes that are kind of intertwine one another. One tube is called Otto, one tube is called Ron, and the other one's called Go. Otto, Ron, Go.
If you say so.
Yeah. Well. And then when you get into Holiday World, a lot of the rides, when I went, it reminded me a lot of fair rides. Okay. Those kinds of the corkscrews and the stuff like that were in there. So you could tell that these are ones that they basically got
the world.
Yeah, they got them. They got them cheap. So, but they do have some established coasters. the Thunderbird, which is it's a wing coaster, kind of like the one in Dollywood.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be off to the Thunderbird's flight, and that's one of the few that's actually. I know it's kind of weird, Thunderbird in Thanksgiving area, but hey, it is what it is. The Legend and the Raven. Now, I think this will speak to you too. They're both wooden coasters. One is patterned after the Raven, as in Edgar Allan Poe's.
I figured that.
The other one's patterned after Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Nice. Okay, that's
like I said, spend all day in Halloween.
All of a sudden, I'm like, I gotta go.
Yeah. So, and
when we going, boys?
It's. I'm down. But it was an interesting thing to walk around this park and see. They really do put a lot of time and effort into the themes of the park. Mm-hmm. Maybe not so much the rides, but the themes definitely. All right. We're going to move a little further south now. And this is another one that no longer exists, unfortunately. But it's a very, very special place in my heart. My sister Robin and I have gone there many times when we were kids. It was in Haines City, Florida. And for those of you who don't know where Haines City, Florida is, it's just outside of Orlando.
Okay.
It was originally owned by Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, and it was called Circus World.
Yes.
I had never heard of this place until you mentioned it before we started recording.
So Circus
I
World.
had heard of it, but I
had not heard of it.
It had actually been rebranded a couple of times. And if you ever get a chance, read up on this. The story behind this is amazing.
In the same town that like all the
sideshow performers.
Well, all the circus people would go to in off season.
Haines City, Florida. Because that's where the trains for Barnum and Bailey
they would go down there.
During the winter. So they wanted to create a place for them to go and still be able to perform.
Oh, that's cool.
During their off season. So that was the original purpose for it. Now, it was originally built back in 1974. It closed, unfortunately, in 1986. So, but
12-year run.
It was a good run on it. Originally, it was owned by, like I said, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. In 1982, they sold it to, you want to watch Alan lose his mind?
Disney.
Mattel.
Really?
Mattel Toy Company owned it from 1982 to 1983.
Okay.
And then
please tell me they had Masters of the Universe.
That I don't know.
The He-Man land.
But they did have a lot of the toy stuff there. And then
right across from Barbie World.
Now, you want to talk about a hard pivot, okay? Mattel sold it to a guy named Jim Monahan, and he owned it for like 2 years. And then in 1986, he sold it to Hardcourt Brace Jovanovich. Now, that name might sound a little familiar if you've ever looked at the side of a textbook. The majority of the textbooks used in schools are made by Hardcourt Brace Jovanovich. Big production company for school. So it's like, how do you go from a toy company to somebody that makes books?
I've never even heard of them.
Yeah.
All the curriculum I see at the college is Pearson.
Yeah. Hardcore. I remember vividly seeing Hardcourt Brace Jovanovich on the side of books.
McGraw-Hill.
McGraw-Hill was another big one. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, that's
so in 1986, this got it was sold and rebranded because unfortunately Barnum and Bailey just couldn't confront it anymore.
Right.
And when it was rebranded, because Florida is known for so many spring training leagues,
right,
it was called Boardwalk and Baseball.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It didn't last very long. It only lasted, I think, a couple of years, and then they finally folded on that. But the Circus World Showcase, this is just amazing to me. It had a 27,000 square foot tent in the middle of the park.
Dang.
That was used for an IMAX theater, a regular movie theater, concerts. They would actually have Daredevil stunts going on in there. Mm-hmm. They had a
Nitro Circus or something.
1,000-seat arena where people would do circus performances like live tiger acts and elephant acts and equestrian, that kind of stuff.
Is this all going on at the same time?
Yes.
Wow.
And here's no. Here's the part that would have tripped you boys out. They actually had people come from the audience to participate in these things.
Again, we live in a much different world.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Hey, who wants to come up and pet the tiger?
Me right here. Let's do it.
Who wants to, ride on the trapeze? But
yeah, absolutely.
Now they did have a couple of rides that that were pretty notable. The Roaring Tiger was a wooden coaster that was there. The Zoomerang. It was a loop ride. Now, this is the thing that I remember. The Zoomerang was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen as a kid because you got in this elevator, you went up 6 stories straight up, got out of the elevator, and got onto the coaster. The coaster was nothing more than a straight shot loop and comes back to a twist. and then you go on it backwards.
6 stories up.
6 stories off the ground.
That sounds amazing, actually. I can see that being terrifying as a child.
I remember
though.
looking up at this thing and seeing it swaying in the Florida breeze. And I'm like, oh my God, this cannot be safe.
Oh, yeah.
And then they also had one called the Hurricane. It was also called the Florida Hurricane. It was another wooden coaster, and they kind of kept that when they went over to boardwalk and baseball. So
cool.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And
anything else?
To sum it up.
Oh, okay.
The biggie. The one that I know all 3 of us have gone to at least once in our lives.
Kings Island.
Kings Island.
In Mason, Ohio, suburb of Cincinnati.
Yep.
Opened in 1972. I give you Kings Island.
Which was once a place where they made gunpowder.
At one point in time, it was Paramount Kings Island.
Yes, it was.
This has one of my, I don't know if it's still there or not, had one of my favorite coasters of all times.
Oh, it had several.
Vortex.
Yes.
Because it had a pretzel loop on it.
There's, so.
I remember because you're talking about being Paramount because they had actually branded one of their roller coasters Face Off.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that
when it was owned by Paramount.
I was there in like the late 90s.
And at the time, Paramount still owned Hanna-Barbera. So you had the kids that had
all
all the Hanna-Barbera stuff, which was so freaking cool. Well, that got rebranded back in, I think it's 06. Nickelodeon, strangely enough,
really
came in and bought out that area and made the Nickelodeon Kids area in 06. And then
that would have been cool.
2010, that got rebranded again, and you guys may have heard of this, Planet Snoopy.
I have not heard of that.
No. Planet Snoopy is in Kings Island, Ohio.
All Peanuts game. Huh?
It's all Peanuts stuff now. So
I'm surprised you haven't been there like a dozen times, Dave. You didn't know about it till right now, did
I
you?
didn't know about it until right now.
I mean, so...
yeah, I like my Charlie Brown.
Oh, so do I. I'm a huge Charlie Brown fan. Now, as I mentioned, some of these have had some pretty notable things happen on them from TV, movies, things like that. In 72, Hanna-Barbera produced an episode, or a movie, called The Banana Splits at Hocus Pocus Park that was actually took place in Kings Island.
Yes.
I think I actually remember seeing that.
In 72, also, The Partridge Family had an episode that was filmed in Kings Island.
Of course, this is all. It would have been in reruns for me.
But most notably, in 73, The Brady Bunch.
Oh,
filmed an episode in Kings Island.
I know I've seen that one in reruns.
I'm sure I've seen all of those.
In 75, Evel Knievel jumped 14 Greyhound buses in the Kings Island parking lot.
Yes, he did. He just about killed himself.
Yep. 133 feet. As a matter of fact, that record held till 1999, broken by his son.
Yep.
Now, I'm sure that if we dug into places like Opryland or Six Flags Over Georgia, you're going to find some notable alumna, shall we say.
Of course.
Well, listen to this. These are former employees of Kings Island. You might recognize a few of these names. Carmen Electra.
Okay.
Started her professional career in 90
Patrick.
as a dancer in Kings Island show It's Magic.
Yes.
Woody Harrelson.
Really?
Was a woodcarver. Nick Lachey.
Yes, I knew he sang.
He was part of a quartet.
I knew that one, yeah.
Dan Patrick.
Like
as in TV, radio, sports
ESPN,
host Dan Patrick.
Wow, Sports Center.
Worked on the golf course.
Okay.
And there was a golf course attached to Kings Island. And one that was brought up in one of our previous episodes, Doug Jones started his career as an actor in one of the shows at Kings Island.
Doesn't surprise me. He doesn't get enough recognition for what he does.
Oh, no. Phenomenal guy. Now, rides. We're going to save the biggie for last, boys. Let's build a little suspense here. So the first one, the Bat. The Bat, no. This was the first modern-day suspended roller coaster in the United States.
That's where it started?
That's where it started with the Bat.
Right.
And I remember riding the Bat. The Banshee, the longest inverted coaster in the world, still holds that record. The Red and Blue Racers.
Yep.
Was in Kings Island, and these were 2 twin-track coasters that literally they would release both coasters at the same time, and you would race each other. Now, this is on a wooden track, mind you.
One would go forward, the other one would go backwards.
Yep.
Right.
And to see who got there first.
Yep.
The biggest thing about Kings Island that a lot of people don't pay attention to is it actually has a 1/3 scale replica of the Eiffel Tower right in the middle of it at 314 feet. And they said that it weighs in approximately 450 tons.
Whoa.
But it is to scale of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And I know this because I've had a very magical moment at the top of the Eiffel Tower.
I do not need to know anymore.
No, I won't give details and I won't give names, but it was...
I don't know why you're talking about that. We got one of them down there in Paris, Tennessee.
Yeah, but it's a lot smaller. A lot smaller. And boys, I would be remiss if we talked about Kings Island and we did not bring up
the Beast.
At one time, the longest,
wooden roller,
fastest, oldest, and best wooden coaster in the world, the Beast.
Yep. That's what everybody, that's what Kings Island was known.
And
people
tallest.
talked about the Beast all the time.
I both loved and hated the Beast at the same time. I loved the ride. I loved the speed of
But
it.
it shook you like a bullet.
It was terrible.
It wasn't the shaking. It was the fact that that car had a small, like 3-inch separator.
Yep.
That only came out like 4 or 5 inches.
Just enough to poke you in the back.
Just enough to break your ribs from the shaking of the coaster. Yep. I was sore for weeks after riding that stupid thing.
So then there was Son of the Beast too.
Yeah, well, Son of the Beast actually got removed later on to build up. I believe it was the Banshee.
I actually rode Son of Beast.
Yeah, Son of Beast was good.
Yeah, Son of Beast was good.
But
my favorite's still Vortex.
Vortex was amazing.
That pretzel loop where you would go in and you would go loop and you would go loop and you would come right back out
through it
on right next to the track that you went into the loop on.
Yeah, it was really.
They were
cool to
parallel.
Watch.
It would twist your mind.
So here's a couple of specs on the Beast here, boys. It at one time, and keep in mind these are always subject, but I believe the Beast still holds a few of these records. Yep. It was the tallest coaster in the world at 110, or the tallest wooden coaster at 110 feet tall.
Right.
Had the longest drop on a coaster at 141 feet. Fastest wooden coaster in the world at, you ready for this? 64.8 miles an hour on wood.
And you felt every one of those planks. Every
and splinters.
One of those
and
planks.
It was the longest wooden coaster, longest track on a wooden coaster. Now, it is listed at 7,363 feet. How good's your math, boys?
It's a mile.
That's a mile and a half.
Yeah, it's over a mile. I knew that.
That is a mile and a half a track.
5,600 and
5,240.
That's 40. That's right.
But that's a mile and a half a track, and they estimated that it took anywhere between 5 to 6 minutes to ride the coaster.
Yeah.
And that's start to finish.
Yeah.
Not to mention that it went underground. Yeah. You know?
It was just long enough to break exactly 3 ribs.
Yes.
It's true. It's true.
It was one of those rites of passage. If you went to Kings Island, you had to ride
that was,
the Beast.
and that was every time somebody would say something, I'm going to Kings Island this summer. We're going to go ride the Beast. That was always a thing.
And I distinctly remember, as I said, I was up there on a band trip in high school. I know, shut up.
Hey, there's 2 of us being geeks in the room. He can shut up over there.
But we went and we were there till the park closed. And we were actually there a little bit after the park closed because I rode the Beast at 10 minutes after the park had closed, after they had shut off all the lights.
Oh, wow. I bet that was awesome.
Oh, my God, it was terrifying.
I know. That's what I'm saying. It was awesome.
Terrifying. Now, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about or are not familiar with it, it is a wooden coaster, as I said, and it is just an epic coaster, but it also, you only can see about maybe 10 or 15% of the track from anywhere else in the park. And that's because it weaves in and out of an entire forest of trees.
Yes, it does.
So you have no idea what's coming when you get on this coaster. You can't tell until you're on this coaster. And then once you're on this coaster, you're praying to God you survive because it's just such a ridiculously wrong experience. Everything about it feels wrong.
So right.
A wooden coaster should not go this fast. A wooden coaster should not take this long. A wooden coaster should not, do these things. And you could tell when you go around turns, you'd feel that wood just give a little bit, just kind of sway with you. And you're going, please let me get off this thing alive. But yes.
And with my ribs.
Oh, yeah, with my ribs. Praying to God I'm still in one piece, preferably a functional one. But that is, one of the best memories that I had of that trip was riding the coaster 10 minutes after the park had closed. Once they shut the lights off, it was just epically good.
Nice. I have one little addendum.
Please.
To this. and I think I said something to you guys before we started recording this. Neither one of you knew what I was talking about. There was a place. I don't know that it's still open.
Right.
Even looking at its Wikipedia, it says that it was under contract 3 years ago to sell, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
There's a place in Maggie Valley, North Carolina.
Okay.
I've been to Maggie Valley.
Ghost Town in the Sky.
The Ghost Town in
Well,
I don't remember
the
seeing any
sky.
signs for it while I was over there.
There was, I think now it's called Ghost Town Village. It used to be called Ghost Town in the Sky. I've only been there one time.
Right.
Mid-ish 90s somewhere, okay? And it was one of those things that, like, you go to Gatlinburg, and it's, like, not that far. Like maybe
an hour.
If that. I mean, type thing, over into North Carolina.
That also happens to be where...
Cherokee, North Carolina. It's, like, all around through the area,
Wheels Through Time motorcycle museum is.
There's nothing really spectacular about Ghost Town in the Sky because it really is. It's like an old West town, and they will have like shootouts, and they have a train, and all that kind of stuff. It's one of those type places.
It's an interstate.
Yeah,
it's one of those places where they draw you off the interstate because we had one in Kentucky called Guntown Mountain.
Yeah,
I believe the word you're looking for is tourist trap.
Yes. Now they did have rides, but they weren't anything for like there wasn't like a.
It was like one of those mobile carnivals
in a lot of ways
through and just set up shop
pretty
and
much
never left.
The thing that I remember the most about it is that because this is on a mountain, you had to ride a ski lift to get up to it.
That's Guntown Mountain,
and you get up there and then you walk around this town. Of course, they have all this kind of stuff going on.
Yeah,
over in the quote unquote park area,
right?
It really did look like one of the little carnies that goes around, And they had one of the ships, that swings back and forth. It was right on the edge of the mountain.
Oh, my God.
Now, it didn't swing out over the mountain, but it swung out
enough.
A long ways to where it was like if you, because I did, sit on the end, when you go all the way up to the top, you're looking straight down the mountain.
Oh, jeez. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, I found it rather fun, but
I saw a video recently of one of those pirate ship rides about to go over.
I know, and it's
never
like,
again.
I kind of wondered like years later, I was like, with erosion and different stuff like that. I was like, I bet that was not exactly the safest thing in the world to be doing.
Not even close.
But that was again, one of those little small places that you hear about. Especially like you said, you're traveling and you go, oh look, there's this and. Now that you mentioned I remember seeing that sign
up in Cave City, Kentucky.
Yeah, and
it's one of those things where you'd be running down the interstate and you'd be looking for a place to lunch,
right.
Close to Dinosaur World.
Exactly.
Dinosaur World. But you pull off the interstate to get lunch, and then this thing would be sitting right there where the kids would all see it.
Absolutely,
it was like, oh,
well, and there was all kind of like Stone Mountain, Georgia. There's not a whole lot there, but they do you could ride the train.
Yep.
And part of that was that it would stop at this Old West, and they would have a shootout, and all this kind of stuff.
See, and anyone that knows me or knows anything about me knows how much I love tourist traps.
Yep.
I am such a fan of the cheeseball tourist traps throughout the United States. And for any of you that share this same passion that I do, there's a great website, and I'm going to give them a shameless plug here. It's called roadsideamerica.com.
Okay.
If ever you are planning a road trip and looking for some really strange stuff to see and do, you can't go wrong with Roadside America. You can search it by state, you can search it by city, you can search it by locations. I will literally spend hours on this thing just deep diving if I have to take a road trip anywhere and say, okay, well, I've got to go here and got to check this out and all this other stuff. It came to play when the infamous Amy and I took a road trip to Knoxville very early on in our dating career. And
I think you call it a career.
Well, it's commitment, damn it. So we went to Knoxville, and for those of you that are unaware, in Knoxville in 1982, that's where they held the World's Fair.
Right.
And there was a lot of different stuff that was there.
I went to the 82 World's Fair.
The Sun Sphere and all that other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the hotel that we were...
a bunch of wigs in it now, so it's...
Oh, yeah. I saw the Simpsons episode, too. But I went to our hotel was right on the grounds from where the 82 World's Fair was.
Uh-huh.
And as we're checking in, I walked around the desk, and I happened to look off to the other side, and I came to a dead stop, eyes bugging out of my head, mouth agape. I had to reach over, grab her, and say, "Do you see what I see? The world's largest Rubik's Cube is still in the hotel in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Well, that's cool.
And still functional.
Yeah, well.
It's just one of those things,
Well, if you go to see that, just keep going east and you can go see the world's largest cast iron frying pan.
No, it's
at the Lodge.
Oh, Lodge
in
South Pittsburgh.
At the Lodge manufacturer.
Okay, I always heard it called Lodge, but all right. He's going to hit me. I know.
Potato.
Well, and I remember distinctly when I was
cast iron skillet right
with a large
back of the head.
Nice. When I was in Las Vegas,
still not as good as a napkin dispenser.
We did a trip from Las Vegas, Nevada, to go to the Grand Canyon, and in the process, I went to Bedrock.
Oh, nice.
And it doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but literally in the middle of the desert, someone had constructed a 1-to-1 scale
of bedrock
from the Flintstones. And yes, I did slide down the neck of a brontosaurus. And yes, I did sit in the car at the drive-in and watch an episode of the Flintstones and picked up a brontosaurus burger. It
sounds cool to me. I mean, yeah, it sounds like.
So at the drive-in, when they brought you your food, did the car flip over?
No, unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
Because that's a liability.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, I love these little pieces of Americana.
Yes,
it's how you get. It's like, it's not just we can talk about Disneyland, or Disney World, or
can we not
Hershey Park?
Yeah, Hershey Park might be.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that that's kind of your. Everybody talks about those,
or
those. Universal Studios.
There's nothing,
or whatever it is.
There's nothing unique about those.
Exactly.
No one is going to come out and tell you the story of that park,
right?
And odds are they're the guy that opened it.
And all of these little places that we've talked about, all have a story, and they all have something unique that is regional. Very very regional to them.
It's something this country's lost is the regionalism, and that was part of what made everything kind of unique,
right?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I encourage all of our listeners to go check out Roadside America and see some of these places and go and visit them and go talk with the people. I mean, you'll find out so many different backstories about just the areas and the places and the weird randomness. I mean, one of my favorites when we went to, for those of you that don't know Tennessee very well, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, it's a very big tourist area.
It's gotten huge in the last couple decades.
Absolutely.
They've almost ruined it, really.
Yeah. It's massive, but at a time, I don't know, I hope it's still there, it had the Salt and Pepper Shaker Museum, which sounds boring as hell until you go in there and you're looking at it going, my mom had those. Wait, my grandmother had these. I remember my aunt having those, and I spent almost 2.5 hours in this place.
I stole a set of those from that restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, it was so fascinating.
They also, have in Gatlinburg, they have the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum.
Yes.
They also have an aquarium, like the huge aquarium.
Yeah, the Ripley's Aquarium.
Ripley's Aquarium.
There's different. There's all kinds of
the Guinness Book of World Records stuff.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that around. They're a little touristy. It's really cool.
They still have some of the original ones.
Yes,
right.
What's the haunted house?
Yeah, that was to say
not the Ripley's.
The Mysterious Mansion.
Mysterious
Mansion
or
is awesome.
Hillbilly Golf.
Yes,
is another
Hillbilly Golf.
You're literally playing golf on the side of a hill.
Right, and it's little. The World of Illusion.
Yes.
That one of those that was up there. This is also, again, if you've never been there, you're like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. But it's every little tourist little place that you've ever wanted to, and the gift shops are amazing.
Oh my God! Yes,
and the
Chinese stuff.
Yeah, the only place that rivals their airbrush game is Panama City Beach. Okay,
so when we used to drive through Gatlinburg, we played a game. It was every time you saw an airbrush shop or a pancake store, or airbrush, pancake, or knife store,
or old Western photo place.
Yes. Yeah, that's another one.
I have a photo of me and my dad that was taken in Gatlinburg. One of those old West places.
I have like 3 or 4 of those.
I know.
But yes, I would encourage all of our listeners, hey, hit us up on Discord, send us emails, let us know some of the places that you remember, some of the parks that you visited that are that special to you. And obviously Disney's going to be special to a lot of people. We know that.
Right.
Universal's going to be special to a lot of people. We know that. But I want to hear about like Lake Winnipesaukee.
Yeah,
or
little bitty places that just
those places that you cannot get away from.
The ones that you went to every summer,
right? Exactly,
or every other summer.
The ones that usually had giveways to get you in the door.
Right. The one that you could only eat sugar cereals during the summer, so you can collect the box.
Yeah, and that was what I say. With going back to Opryland, because you could collect those box tops.
Yeah.
They also had. They eventually introduced what they called the Tricket.
Yep,
which was a 3-day pass.
3-day ticket.
Yeah, and
which was based off the Trix Rabbit.
Yeah, and it was really cool because it was a better deal to get that than it was to get a 1-day pass.
Yep.
To go in there. So.
Yep. and people would wear it out, man. I mean, it's
my dad just finally sold an RV that he had for a long time. Now, we didn't have it when I was growing up. He bought it, I don't know, 15-ish years ago, and it's been sitting for a long time. But one of the things that was on the back of that RV. Actually, it wasn't on the back. It was on the front. Was the parking pass.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they would have like the little parking passes, and it would have the year, like what year it was good for.
I remember that,
and it had like 3 of them on there from like the mid '80s. It was so awesome.
So before when Opryland closed, they had a big sale where they were trying to sell off a lot of their memorabilia in the parking lot. And I actually went over there because at the time I lived practically across the street from there. I lived off of Pennington Bend.
Yeah.
But I remember distinctly, and I still have it somewhere, a miniature stein, like a beer stein that's about the size of a shot glass, that is an Opryland USA stein.
I know.
And there's actually great, and I'm sure that there are other ones for different parks.
10 years ago, when I was doing the flea market, we would do consignment stuff for people. Sometimes we have things. They're like, I don't want this anymore, but I don't really know how to sell it. So we would do it on consignment or whatever.
Right.
One of the things that we had for sale that we took to the flea market that did not last past the first half day that we were there, and I can't remember the exact name of the shop, but it was the sign for the apothecary shop.
I remember. It was a candy store.
Yes.
I remember that.
We had the actual sign.
Nice.
That was on the bill, that was attached to the front of the building.
Nice.
Somebody jumped on that immediately.
And there's
there
are
people who collect a lot of that stuff.
Well, there's a lot of groups on like Facebook and stuff that, pay tribute to a lot of these fallen amusement parks.
Yes, I said Defunctland.
Yeah.
You go, that expedition, I'll link to us. Defunctland especially.
Yeah.
It hits you in the feels for a lot of things.
To this day, every Monte Cristo I buy at whatever restaurant is still compared to that restaurant in the New Orleans area.
Yes.
That had that Monte Cristo, because that was the best one ever.
Well, the infamous Amy, as I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about her on this podcast before.
And she's been on this podcast.
Well, it's from Detroit. She's
right.
from the Detroit area. And one that her and her mom share a lot of memories of was one called Boblo Park.
Okay.
Or Boblo Island, Boblo Island. I had no idea what this was. And when I went up to visit, her mom actually still has a framed poster for Boblo Island, and said she wouldn't part with it for love or money.
Yeah.
Because it was just that's what it was. And we actually, one of our early dates, watched a YouTube video of somebody going and visiting Boblo Island and seeing all of the structures that are still there and a lot of the ones that aren't, which was so much fun.
Yes.
And again, I'm crying out to you guys to tell us these things, because I love these stories, and I love any of the information about any of these parks or locations that you remember as a child, or you remember as a road trip, or you and your buddies went to go check out, or anything along those lines that either aren't there anymore or carried such a memory for you that you want to share those memories. I would really encourage you to do so. Send us on Discord.
Absolutely.
Email us.
Drop stuff in the Discord over this. Man,
absolutely.
So much. Yeah. We love
anything along those lines, send it to us. And, Alan is going to post up a bunch of the links on these things.
Links, yes.
And I know that there's probably hundreds of other parks that we didn't touch on. I apologize about that. We're trying to keep these, we don't want a 16-hour-long podcast.
We did go a little bit of stuff that we either went to or had the opportunity to visit. Like I said, this episode was very regional, and but
even though it's regional, it still carries for whatever part of the country.
We went from Florida to Ohio in this thing. So that's a pretty
and over to North Carolina.
Yeah, but I'm talking about anything in between that. That's a large chunk of the country that we just covered. Yeah. So
we could have. And I know there was Cedar Point.
Yeah, Cedar Point's
we've never been there.
Yeah,
I personally have never been to Cedar Point.
Honestly, I wanted to go, but I started looking at their height and weight requirements.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Well, we didn't talk about Beach Bend.
Oh,
that was
Beach Bend is one in Bowling Green, where I went to college.
Now, to be fair, Beach Bend was
more of a raceway.
Known for its raceway. They added the park to it,
right?
It was for the kids to have something to do while they're doing it.
Honestly,
it's still there.
I've never been to the park side of it. I've always been there for either the car shows or the drag racing.
I've been to the park side as well as the drag race side of it, and it's like one of those little carnivals that pops up on the side of the road,
right?
But it's a permanent structure for them, and they're always there, and it's just that kind of weird nostalgic feeling to sit on like a tilt-a-whirl or
the zipper,
and you know,
I rode the zipper once. I swore I would never get back on that thing again.
Going back to Cave City, I think the last Wigwam Village is still there, which was a motel that was built back in the 50s that were built like teepees.
Dinosaur World.
Yeah,
Dinosaur World is still there.
My in-laws actually honeymooned at Wigwam Village in Cave City.
There was in used to be, I'm sure it's not there any longer, but there used to be one of those in Gatlinburg also.
Yeah.
You know,
there were several of them.
Oh, they were
built across the
the
U.S., but I think the last still operating
right
set of those is in Cave City, Kentucky.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Which is right there with Guntown Mountain.
Guntown Mountain and the Dinosaur World, and
it's no ghost town in the sky.
It's none. Okay, you were.
I'm sure they're probably the exact same thing.
There is one.
More than
there
likely.
is one that I have some very good friends of mine, Dave and Dina Pendragon, that live in Concord, North Carolina. And one memory that they've always shared with me is apparently there was a park in North Carolina that was based off the Wizard of Oz.
Ooh.
And it completely went just decayed, derelict.
Right.
But the yellow brick road is still there.
Oh, that's good.
And every year, once a year, they will open up that park and let people walk down the yellow brick road.
You talk about defunct theme parks that were in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the name? I can't remember. I can't pull it off the top of my head. I'm hoping one of you will. The one that Jim and Tammy Faye Baker had.
That's Heritage USA.
Heritage USA. That's what it was. Yeah.
Heritage USA. And that actually started my fascination with defunct amusement parks and theme parks by seeing the fact that those buildings were basically untouched.
Right. They sat there for decades
and just got completely wiped away by sea air. Yeah. Just destroys paint jobs.
Right.
So that and moss, was everywhere on this.
Get your cry hankies here.
That's right.
Oh, bad. Well, and another one,
just thinking about mascara running down the face. It's like,
that's like Twitty City that got bought out by the Trinity Broadcast with Easter egg head.
Yeah. Was it what was her name?
I can't remember.
The pink
I have a
lady.
funny story about that. I'm not going to tell it on air.
I have several.
But it was Jan and what was his name? Last name was Crouch. That ran that forever. Anyway,
if you drive by Twitty City in Hendersonville, Tennessee, at a certain point during the day when the sun's setting, you can still see where they had offset the bricks in the walls around Twitty City, where it still says "Hello, darling."
I know.
Yes,
I know.
Which still special place in my heart. You still got the House of Cash up there too,
Yeah.
But one last one before
it's close to the public now.
Yeah, it has been for years.
But we were talking about defunct ones that are in the Carolinas, and I'd mentioned this one to you guys off air. But there was one that was called Hard Rock Park.
Oh yeah, you were talking about
and
it sounded cool.
It later got branded as Freestyle Music Park. Yeah, I know that's a much lamer name.
Yeah, it really is.
But this was owned by Hard Rock Cafe, and I found out it was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh wow, okay.
And they had developed this park and opened it up, and it was literally everything was hard rock oriented. They had punk, they had metal, they had all this other kind of stuff that was going.
I'm in.
Yeah, I know this is like our happy place. This is our Nirvana. And I think Nirvana was
there.
Probably
there, yeah.
But it didn't last very long. And then I think this was right around the time that Hard Rock went bankrupt.
Oh yeah.
So they sold off everything, and then they rebranded it, and they just never could make any money off of it. So it just kind of died off. But it was left abandoned for a long time.
This may sound as heresy for me to say this, but I've never been to Myrtle Beach.
Neither have I.
I have been.
Yeah, seems like, especially in this area, that was such a rite of passage for so many years. It was like, we're going to Myrtle Beach.
It was
like Daytona.
Yeah.
It was because of band. We went down there, did a parade, and then we spent the entire weekend basically tearing up the Aussie Strip down there.
Well, there you go.
Well, yeah, that's as you do.
Riding the roller coasters that shouldn't be standing anymore. Winning the little mirrors with like the MTV,
with like Dockin'.
Yeah, exactly.
Metallica,
and the Coke mirrors. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
Oh my gosh! But yes, please come online, share these memories with you if you like any of
That's
these.
all those little carnivals are great for: Coke mirrors and roach clips. Kids win them.
And big stuffed animals that you're never going to win.
No. Yeah. Those things are all rigged against you.
Well, and that was
all rigged.
Talking about Opryland. Opryland had that whole section that was nothing but
all the
carnival
games. I know, and I lost all kinds of money on.
Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I lost money on those stupid basketball ones.
Overinflated basketballs with
with a bent
undersized hoop.
Once high school happened and I had my season passes, I had a ton of friends that would work at Opryland, and I never legitimately won any prizes, but I walked out of there with prizes.
One of my exes worked there. Actually, I think she was there.
My sister worked
almost
there
all
for
the
a
way
while.
up until they closed.
Wow.
So yeah, it was.
Do you remember the carts where you would fill the bottles up with the different levels of colored sand?
Oh yeah,
My sister
she
was basically the
Yeah.
manager for those two carts.
Nice.
Well, and see, you ask anybody that grew up in Middle Tennessee from like 74 all the way up into the 90s, and they have some kind of
72 to 97.
Some kind of an experience with Opryland.
Absolutely.
They loved it or they hated it. And honestly, it's far more love than there was hate.
I had family that lives in Indiana, and they would come down every couple of years, and that was always a thing. It's like one day we're going to Opryland.
And how many people came down after the park was closed that were so angry that was where they planned their vacation?
Yeah.
They wanted to come down for this park, and it wasn't there anymore.
And
the amount of people around here that they started their jobs at Opryland.
Right.
First, I mean, I was trying to look that up. I know Kathy Mattea got her job.
Oh yeah,
was there.
Yeah. What's the name?
I'm just talking about regular people.
What was the dancer? She was married to Richard Marx at one time. She was in
Cynthia Rothrock.
Cynthia Rhodes.
Cynthia Rhodes,
not Rothrock. Cynthia Rhodes was from Nashville. And started out there.
Yes,
dancing and so
she was in Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing.
Yep. But yeah, again, please share these memories, and if you are familiar with any of these ones that we've talked about and want to talk about them, come on there and hit us up and tell us, hey, I remember riding the Wabash Cannonball, or I remember standing on that bridge over the Old Mill Scream and getting soaked.
You got soaked more on the bridge than you did riding the
ride. And I remember trying.
And that was always a school field trip. Usually end of the year sometime. Hey, we're going to go to Opryland on such and such day, blah, blah, blah. And
you'd go to the McDonald's over there by Opryland that had the radio station in it.
WMAK or WMAC.
Still has it. Yep.
Yeah, WMAC. And then you would go over to Opryland, and they would just turn you loose.
Well, what you do is you go over the Old Mill Scream, get soaked, then run over to the Barnstormers, ride the Barnstormers to get dried off, or the swings to go get dried off.
See, I would do
that
the
was
swings.
The Tennessee Waltz.
The Tennessee Waltz.
Because there was no way I was getting on the Barnstormers.
I love the Barnstormers.
3 cables.
Loved them.
All that held that plane to that
thing was awesome too.
50 feet up in the air, and you were spinning around in a giant plastic plane.
And are we going to just completely gloss over the petting zoo?
Oh, well, not only the petting zoo. Do you remember the rafts?
Yes,
with Monkey Island out there.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's So,
I think most of us had our first experience with live animals that were not our pets at the petting zoo.
Yeah. It was like. Yeah, it was one of those things. It was like, it was just such a cool little place.
And that weird little store where you would go in and get your picture made on the magazine cover.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
let's not talk about the angle in. As you already said, let's not forget the angle in.
You call it the angle. Yeah, you call it the angle in. We called it the Tilton Hilton.
It was kind of like the mystery spot.
So if you go on YouTube, there are videos still on YouTube of people going through the angle in.
Yes.
And it's hilarious.
What was the... It wasn't a teacups. It was a Little Deuce Coop. That's what it was called. It was the indoor teacup space.
I had one of my worst injuries.
I got so sick on that.
That was one of my first ride-induced vomit sessions.
I never got sick, but okay. So for those of you who don't know,
my equilibrium's terrible. So that was
the Little Deuce Coop was a teacup ride, but it was in this giant dome building that was blacked out.
Yes, it was.
And they would turn the lights out and have strobe lights go on while you're riding this thing
and playing 50s music.
Playing 50s music at full volume,
like volume.
It was an epileptic seizure.
Oh, it was a seizure waiting to happen. Absolutely.
If this amp goes up to 10, the Little Deuce Coupe was sitting somewhere around 18.
Yes, it was.
So,
absolutely.
But to get in, and because they didn't want anybody sneaking in the doors, the exit doors on these places always had these springs that would hold them in place to snap them back in place when somebody exit. Well, your hero over here was a dumbass kid.
Hard too.
Was a dumbass kid and was walking out and wasn't paying attention, and the door snapped back and broke my nose.
Oh.
Yeah. Ow.
Tin Lizzies was a big one for me.
Oh, Tin Lizzies were
because that's where my grandmother.
Apparently, we're doing a whole episode about Opryland.
You're getting
it.
Hey,
my grandmother, that was my mom's mom. That was one of her favorite things because she could just get on it and ride. Because when the Tin Lizzies first started, they were on like railroad tracks.
Yeah. They had a rail that they kept everything.
Well, no, they actually had railroad tracks.
Oh,
I remember this as a kid because
I don't ever remember that.
They would let
I remember having that one rail, and
that came later,
so that you could bump it back and forth.
Yeah. That came later.
The rumor was always that there was a place on there was one spot that you could like jump
cut it hard enough. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
What happened is because it was on like railroad tracks at first, it didn't matter how you steered it. The steering wheel didn't work. It just take you around. You just had the pedal that would make it go or stop,
slow down.
So my grandmother would always let me ride. What actually happened is one of them, the steering wheel worked, and somebody jumped the track, and that's when they reworked it and put the rail in the middle.
Okay, that's how it worked.
That's how it worked.
I cannot tell you how many memories I have of the Tin Lizzies. My best one though is still the Rock and Roller Coaster. Not so much for the ride, but where it was located was right beside the pizza joint.
Yes, it was.
That when you're riding this coaster, you were smelling this pizza.
Oh my god!
It was
funnel cakes.
Oh yeah!
Oh my god! The smell of funnel cakes.
Opryland is a big reason why I'm a fat kid. It's because of the funnel cakes.
Preach, brother, preach.
Oh man, that I miss Opryland.
I mean,
and you remember like the rope, like where you could go and like you climb.
Oh, you're talking about the playground area.
Yeah, it was like all the big like you could like. I mean, it was
because that's where all the General Mills characters.
Yeah, it was like rope ladder. I mean, it was like it was a huge thing. I mean, it was like, it was
they had a ball pit.
Yeah, I mean, it was just.
Well, and this is not just thrill rides. I mean, they had this beautiful carousel that we talked about. Mm-hmm. But the thing was that they would take the carousel was actually out on the lake.
Yes.
So you had to walk out the bridge to get to it and ride this thing
One of the things we didn't talk about, though, is that because you had Opryland and then you had the Opryland Hotel right next to it.
Yes.
Yep.
Eventually, Gaylord brought the General Jackson to town.
Yes.
Which was you could legitimately go over and get on this riverboat and ride the Cumberland River all the way to downtown Nashville. It would dock at riverfront. You could get out, walk around downtown, and then come back and get on it and go back to Opryland into Opry Mills.
And you were getting lunch on the way out there. And you were getting dinner and a show on the way back.
Remember the smaller version? You had the General Jackson, and then you had the smaller version of it called the Music City Queen.
Yes, there was a Music City Queen. I remember somebody died on the Music City Queen one night.
There was more than one.
Yeah, well, that was
because that was the party barge.
Yeah, it was.
Absolutely.
That was the get the rock band out there on and everybody drink and party. So
yeah. So but yeah, I mean, we could, like I said, spend hours on Opryland. And again, if you have any memories of these and you're interested on, there's some great groups on Facebook that are related to Opryland that show commercials and video, commercials from there. It shows stills from there. I still have some stills that I posted from my sister and I, riding in the little mini barnstormers.
Oh, I know there are all kinds of photos at my parents' place from Opryland.
Nice.
I know there are tons of them. I have to go over there and go through them.
I'm sure my mom had them at some point. Yeah. Who knows where they're at now?
But yeah, unfortunately, as they say, all things must pass, and that was one that I think is still going to be a raw nerve for everyone that grew up in Middle
because
Tennessee.
Of how bogus it came to.
Well, until we're all dead.
Garbage.
I mean, that's honestly that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
Is that as long as there's one of us that's still alive that remembers Opryland will always live.
If we ever find the guy that put an end to it,
did you hear the story about that?
We need to shave his head, tar and feather him, and ride him out of town.
Basically, what happened is that Gaylord Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Who owned Opryland Hotel, owned the Wild Horse Saloon downtown.
They owned the Grand Ole Opry.
They owned the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
They brought in, it was a family-run organization.
Yes.
It was Gaylord, that was their last name of the family that owned it.
Not just an insult.
They, their last name was not Falker. So it was, they brought in outside counsel, basically. They had a new CEO that came in. Like once the father stepped, I think he just stepped down. He didn't die. Nobody in the family really wanted to be CEO, so they brought in somebody from the outside. I can't off the top of my head pull where he came from. I want to say he came from another hotel, like it was some other like big hotel or whatever.
Right.
It's probably something from Vegas.
I don't know. Anyways, this new CEO that came in said, you know what? Let's try to like get away from all of this hee-haw, rumbo jumbo, and all this kind of stuff. Let's go to something a little more uptown. So they closed down a park that was profitable from 72 all the way to 97.
Never make money.
Never closed in the red a single year that it was open.
Even when it expanded to add new rides to it.
And then they tore it down and built a mall.
They partnered with
that
the Mills
flooded
Corporation.
10
Well,
years later.
Opryland flooded early.
Yes, it did. It did. But
it was
funny.
The curse.
Yeah. It's funny because like years later when he left Gaylord, he was asked in an interview about his time at Gaylord and asked if there was any regrets he had. He's like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have closed down Opryland. No joke, you shouldn't have closed down Opryland.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure
what moron says, hey, we've got
that moron.
We have a profitable
money-making
machine here that people come from all over the country to go to.
That is employing how many people?
That stay in our hotel, that spend money on all of our attractions, that do all this stuff. We'll close it down and open them.
Legitimately the biggest non-gambling resort visited in America ever.
It's funny you say that because part of the design of Opryland Hotel was to eventually allow for riverboat gambling.
I know.
Yeah.
If you notice, there's a section of Opryland Hotel that is the Delta, is what they call it. And it's where, so for those of you who aren't familiar with the layout, right beside Opryland Hotel.
Probably most everybody listening to this.
the Cumberland River runs right beside Opryland.
All of that.
Yeah, all of the Opryland area.
Bend area.
And the initial idea was that they were going to allow for, if Tennessee was going to pass riverboat gambling, they would have been able to take.
Which we still haven't.
No, we have not. They were going to be able to take the General Jackson, bring it literally into the hotel and dock it.
Right, because it's on water. As long as it's on water.
Bring people on there and then take them down to downtown Nashville and back again and allow gambling on this and then go. Since that never passed, it never came through, unfortunately, we got a great hotel out of it.
Right.
The hotel's amazing, but it's still not what it was supposed to be.
Nope.
So in any case.
Yeah, anyway, so now that we said we were going to end this like 20 minutes ago. Again, share all of your memories with us. Because this is retro summer, man.
Yeah.
We're having such a good time. And all. This has been really good. Even better than I expected it to be.
Y'all have been having a good time.
Well,
I'm just now getting back.
Well, you've been here for a few episodes, so it's and there'll be more.
You've been here in spirit, Dave. You know that.
Oh, I know.
Believe me, I have many times been recording this podcast with Barry and the infamous Amy, and I'm just like, wow, I can hear Dave like grumbling right now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like
there's been a few times I've been over here with Alan, and we keep looking over at the empty chair expecting a scowl to come back at us or something.
There it is. Dave's mad now. So.
Well, hey. Wrap it up, son.
What do you expect from the redheaded Scotsman? So anyways, guys, I am Alan Smith.
I'm the other guy, Big Dave.
And I'm Barry.
And we will see you next time.
See ya.
The Wabash Cannonball. She came down from Birmingham one cold December day. As she rolled into the station, you could hear all the people say, there's a girl from Tennessee, she's long and she's gone. She came down from Birmingham on the Wabash Cannonball.